15, and then we'll work on either 16 or 17 as well. So, you guys, this one I told you in the directions, use a GCF. That means we want to find a common factor among all three terms. So I look at the numbers, 12, 9, and 3. What goes into all three terms? 3. Then, among the variables, there's only a C here, so that's not a common one. But if you look, there's a D that's common everywhere. In terms of that, remember, it's only as much as it can give. So I can't like shake it and say I need another one. It's only the single D to the first power. Now, I do have to write that on the outside. If people didn't write that on the outside, then I took off. So then from each of these, I'm going to divide each of these by 3D.
What's 3D? Sorry.
Okay. So 12 divided by 3 is 4. There's C stays. D to the third over D to the first is D squared. 9 over 3 is 3. D squared over D to the first is just D. And then these cancel, but we can't just leave it blank, so we write a +1 as like a placeholder. Now 14 is very similar. You're pulling out a common factor, but you want the greatest common factor. So you need to make sure you pull out the biggest factor possible. Okay? Anyone have a preference on 16 or 17? We do 16? Or did you figure that one out? No, let's do 16.
I got really started on one.
No, it's okay. 16. You got that other one now? Yeah. Does that make a little bit more sense? You realize what you're supposed to be doing there. So watch for the words factor there. Okay, guys. So this is number 16. This direction said factor by grouping. Now technically I shouldn't have had to tell you that because it's 4 terms. When you see 4 terms, it should jump out at you. Oh, that's when I group it. There's 4 people and I say get into groups, you'd probably pick 2 and 2.
Unless people have to get into a group of 4.
Right? But if there's 4 people and I said groups, I would think 2 and 2 would make sense. Okay, so these first 2, I have to look at the GCF of just these first. Now the 4 and 3, there's not a common number. 4 and 3 don't have a common factor. But there's an x to the third and x squared. I'm just looking at this first half. So the GCF of that is x squared. So I'm just taking an x squared out of those first 2 terms. And if it helps to show that I'm dividing that out, to go ahead and do that. So I'm dividing an x squared out. I'm left with 4. X to the third over x squared is just x. And then 3x squared over x squared. The x squareds cancel. I'm just left with 3. So that's my first half there. Now the second half I have to look at. The 8x and the 6. So 8 and 6, what's common among those? Just a 2, yep. So we're just going to take out a 2, and I'm going to write it as a +2 so I kind of know what the sign is. I'm going to divide those each by 2. It actually looks like, you know, when they have the 3D like glasses, that's what it looks like, the purple and blue together. Never mind. So,
It was blue and red.
is it? So 8x divided by 2 is going to be 4x. 6 divided by 2 is 3. We know we're doing something right when we get the same thing twice. So I have 4x plus 3. I'm going to pull that out now. Once I pull that out, I'm left with, this is gone, x squared plus 2. I didn't have anyone try to do this, but x squared plus 2 can't be factored further because it's not difference of squares. It's plus and 2 is not a perfect square. Okay. Questions there at all? Do we want to do some practice with this stuff on whiteboards, or do we want to move on to the factoring and talk about that right away? What do you guys think? We're okay? We want to keep doing more corrections?
Where are we at right now? 16.
Yeah.
We might get all of them done today.
Yeah, we might, and that'd be okay. All right.
Wait, it's almost 10.
I know, it's, yeah. We still have a half hour in here, so I'd like to talk for about another 15 minutes if that's okay, or at least, or maybe 10. All right, the next group was factoring. Now, this is something that maybe over the weekend or maybe over the next few days, you should look more at your factoring chart. So, like these first couple were really a struggle for a lot of people, is when we have two terms. And it says factor, and if it's not possible, state not factorable. I'm so sorry for those of you guys who wrote not factorable like 15 times on here and got all those wrong, because I did give you a point for at least writing not factorable, because at least I felt like you thought about it a little bit maybe, but all of them were factorable. So, should we do 18?
You gave us so many questions that could be not factorable on our homework that made it very difficult.
No, there weren't many in our
There were
homework.
a few. There were a few.
I think there was maybe like one or two. All right,
There were
so,
like 3 or 4.
and in our notes, we never did any that word. Okay, guys, you do it yourself. Oh, you have a brace on. I thought you were like just like squeaking like. Okay. All right.
I know the circulation.
Yeah, right. So, okay, guys. So, two terms. When you see two terms and it's factoring, couple of things. GCF is one option. The only, and this one doesn't have a GCF. There's nothing common among 4a or 4d squared minus 1. The other option is difference of squares. These do both happen to be perfect squares. If you check, this is where you're checking like does square root of 4 work and does square root of 1 work? Are those whole numbers? Hopefully they're not ones you have to put in your calculator, but if you do, that's fine. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 1 is just 1, because 1 times 1 equals 1. 2 times 2 equals 4. So this is one of our, can you do this with us, please? This is one of ours that needs to be fixed, or needs to be factored by difference of squares. So 4d to the second, what times what gives me 4d to the second? 2d. What times what gives me 1? 1 times 1. And then with difference of squares, in order to get that negative, we do a positive and a negative. Now if you guys look at the one right next to that number 19, same idea. And I looking back on this test, I thought maybe I put maybe a few too many of these on there, because like there was actually ended up being 3 on there like this. And so if you got one wrong, you probably got all 3 of them wrong. So 18, 19, and then on the back side, technically, number 24 was also difference of squares.
I got 19 right. But the other 2 I blanked out in my autopilot.
So why don't you guys try 19? But you have to use a GCF first. So if you want to check that 24 as well, if you're. So take the 3 out first. So the GCF, put a 3 on the outside of the parentheses first. So you did that, but now you can go further. So look at those 2 terms inside the parentheses, and that's difference of squares. The x squared and the 25. So you divide that by 3 until it just be x squared. All the way. And then 75 divided by 3 is 25. So we write minus 25. And then that becomes like this type of problem, the difference of squares, because x squared and 25 are both perfect squares. Can you do that when it's a similar height?
Yeah. Well, what about the x squared?
Same thing, so it's just going to be x times x, right?
Yeah.
So in your parentheses, x and x.
How do you do the X one?
Probably do it. I'll only think it should be x times x, so just to get x squared, it's not squared.
I do like
So
this.
just x and x.
How'd you get so?
That.
Oh, dude.
So do you have a calculator? Do you know how to do
That
that? Careful, it's not 49. So I'll give you have to take the square root of 49 in order to get that number. So she got 7 by taking the common factor among those two? So that's the one, start with the GCF. Factor something out first. Carefully, that's flipped. So x squared plus the star. There's the first two half of parentheses. X squared has to be what times what? How do you get an x squared? How do we get 4d to the side? We get 2d and 2d. So how do we get x squared? What times what would give me x squared? Worry about the numbers. No, how would I get the variable x squared? What should we try to multiply together? Yeah, so x times x. That's going to be the starting parentheses. So your parentheses. Now this part is difference of squares. And then if you want to check that, square root of 49 is 7, so that's 7 and 7. That's it. Just leave the tree down the front. And so this one, what we were missing is that there's a GCF of those two, but would have been helpful so you're not finding factors of all these huge numbers. Those are all divisible by 5. So you can divide it 5 out first. So when you see factor completely, that probably means there's like maybe an extra step. So like kind of check for that GCF first. Yeah. So that if you want to multiply the 36, add the 16, start making a list. So 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12. Yeah. How are we doing? What is your plan on, were you going to plan on retaking this or plan on retaking something else? I would probably say something else. So I think there's a test that you didn't do as well. No, that's okay. If you wanted to retake this one, that'd be fine. And then you could probably even get another retake. Why don't, oh, you don't want to this? Why don't you go in your independent campus and let's look up? You've never been in independent campus? Oh, so go in your grades. Yeah, so go in grades. Grades. So we click in here. So it's pretty clear which one you should probably read, right? And so that one, IPBC will tell you to prepare for that one by going back, if you have any missing on chapter 7, or maybe doing the chapter 7 review again. All right, how are we doing, you guys? Yeah. Oh wait. Only when you don't want the plus sign in the middle, it's all being multiplied. And it's just the 1, 3, because we only pulled out the 3 one time. And so it's just all being multiplied.
So this is 36.
This one is a lot easier of a problem if you put the GCF first, so you're not finding factors. You would spend like your time kilometer lady. So if you divided this all by 5 first, kind of like you did here, that would make this much easier to do. Oh, you didn't go far enough, so you can still factor the inside. And the inside is that nice multiply to 56, add the 15. All right, guys, is there something else we should go through before we finish up for today? 21. Okay, so let's look at 21. If you guys need 21, feel free to look with us. Okay. Guys, these are my favorite kind. When I see the x squared in front, I don't have to worry about GCF, which I like. When it starts with an x squared, I already know it has to be x times x. I know that half is done already. So in that case, this is the kind where I want to multiply to get this term, but add to get this one. What is this term technically? A -1. So I want to multiply to -6, but add to -1. That's my list. Which one adds to give me a -1? Here's my -3 and +2. So that's all we had to do on those. So when I see the x squared in the front, I'm right away, I'm like, oh, those are those kind I like that I'm just multiplying to get the one. That same kind is for number 20. On the back side is where we got into the X thing for the first couple, and then the last two you needed to DCF first. Okay? So, I'm going to stop for today. So I'm going to actually hang on to your test now for today, unless you have other corrections you want to work on right now. If you're done with your corrections for now, that's fine. We'll get some more time for corrections tomorrow. I'll give you guys a little bit of time for corrections. And then we do have a homework assignment, but I'm going to shorten it for you guys. So let me pull this up. Okay. So I have this retake practice, but it's super long. So let's cut it shorter for today. Now, if you're like dying to do a whole bunch of these, we're not going to do all of these today. Let me explain what we'll stop with. So for today, let's do up to 29. Is that a good part of the way through? I think so. So let's stop at 29 here. So we'll do up to 29 for tomorrow, and the rest of it will be due for Monday. But if you're like wanting to work ahead or something, or you know you have some extra time, go ahead and do more. But let's do that for tomorrow. This is basically the add, subtract, multiply, and then also a little bit of factoring. So if you guys are done with corrections for today, now that doesn't mean you're completely done with corrections. I'm going to pick them all, everyone's test up today. If you're okay with handing it over for now, we have about 15 minutes left. This is in your book. It's in like the back of the book. There's all these extra problems. You're like, there's just problems everywhere. So this is what's due. So even if you're not retaking it, you should be doing this up to 29. The rest of it we'll have assigned for Monday. So. Sorry, 946. You need glasses. Because I need glasses and I'm not wearing mine and I can read it from back here.
I can't read it from here.
So we took Griffin in for his contact checkup because he's had his contacts for a few weeks. The doctor's like, you're wearing your contacts in the wrong eyes. And like Mr. Donnie was the one who helped him with it. He's like, oh, the eyes don't matter, or which eye is which. And I'm like, so Griffin's been wearing his contacts in the wrong eyes. You can't see.
Wait. How?
I know. I was not the one at the contact appointment, the initial contact appointment. Did I get your test back? Yeah.
How does that even happen?
I don't know. Send your husband to do something.
That's why you can't trust him.
Yeah.
He plays bad music.
I always say, like, I tease him a lot. I say he's a pretty face and he's great with the kids, but I can't trust him for much else. He's a good guy.